And welcome everybody to the May MAB meeting. My name is Ted Morley. I'm the acting chair for this meeting as we kick it off. I'd like a quick motion to approve the April minutes, if we may. Yes, I'm sorry. Back up. Roll call first. Thank you.
Mr. Whitten. Here. Ms. Shirelli. Absent. Mr. Dennison. Absent.
Here.
He's on Zoom, I believe.
Okay, great. Ms. Norvell. Absent. Ms. McGowan. Here. Mr. Franks. Here. Mr. Flanagan. Here. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Chair Morley.
Here. Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So may I have a motion to approve last month's minutes?
Motion to approve. I'd like to put a second on that, but I said I want to be able to have discussion on that after the meeting, maybe on old business and new business.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. James Harrison was first, and then Norbert was second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce, we have a new member joining us this evening. So this is his first meeting. Mr. Robert Franks is joining the MAB. So I think you were just appointed, what, last night? Tuesday night, yeah. So welcome to the room. Make sure your microphone's on there. Just little red light's pretty hard to see sometimes.
Okay, testing, here we go.
There we go.
All right.
Just give us the cliff notes, Bob.
Okay, the brief one. I've been, had a waterfront home here in Fort Lauderdale for 37 years. I've got a 1,600-ton master upon oceans license. I've been captain since 1980. Currently, I'm working at Bradford Marine as a project manager. Previously, we worked for the city in marine facilities, ran the pilot boats for 3 years, maintained the boats. Worked at Florida Atlantic University's Department of Ocean Engineering for 11 years, adjunct professor, taught scientific diving. I've run dive boats, I've run charter boats, I've run, cruise boats, you name it. I also participated in the BP spill back about 10 years ago. We collected 2.5 million gallons of oily water, so when it comes to oil spills, very, very familiar with that. And my college degree is marine biology.
Great. That's fantastic. It's nice to have another boat driver in the room. I'm licensed also, so
Good.
it's great to have another ship driver. It really is. Welcome. It's a great room. We do a lot of good stuff here. Before we get into the next item we have a board election tonight for both chair and vice chair. I want to quickly just read the purpose of the Marine Advisory Board, if I may, because I think it's important that we all understand that when we go into these meetings. So the purpose of the Marine Advisory Board is to study and recommend to the City Commission on all phases of operation, activities, regulations, advertising, and publicity of the waterways of the city. So very often we get requests for variances and we hear different things in here, but we are the advisors for the City Commission on matters of the waterways. Our expertise is what they rely on usually for those factors. So people like you, people like Bob Dennison, Norbert, when it comes to construction, it's vital to have those people in the room. So thank you for joining us and thank you for serving. It means a lot to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next order of business, Andrew, I believe, is our elections for chair and vice chair, correct?
That's correct. We need to have a motion nominating someone for chair separately from a motion nominating someone for vice chair.
Okay. May I have a motion for the room for the position of chair?
I'd like to make a motion that Ted Morley stay on as chairman, please.
Okay, Steve Whitten made a motion. May I have a second?
Second, Kitty McGowan.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. I'd like a motion for the vice chair, and I'd like to nominate Steve Whitten as our vice chair. May I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
James Harrison, second. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair, welcome. All right, thank you very much. So our waterway crime and boating safety report. Sergeant O'Neill, how are we?
We're doing pretty good. So I'm now permanently the marine unit supervisor
Oh, great.
for hopefully the near distant future. So in the month of April, the Fort Lauderdale Police Department Marine Unit respond to 75 calls for service on the waterways. Nothing, only call really of note, I would say, is a burglary that happened at the Carefree Boat Club on April 22nd, where a chart plotter was stolen. Unfortunately, there was no cameras there, and the employee who called us did not want us to process the vessel. So it's kind of hard to catch these guys when we don't have any evidence. Hopefully the detectives can follow up and maybe find the chart plotter for sale or something like that. That's usually a pretty good source. Also in the month of April, we wrote 62 citations. We responded to one boating accident, which is low for us, but maybe all those boating citations help that. And we used 89 hours of the MLA grant.
Okay. How was the Air and Sea Show for you guys?
Went great. No issues whatsoever. Saturday had some pretty good seas and some stormy weather in the morning, so a lot of people stayed out. Sunday we had a pretty good crowd and didn't really have any issues at all.
Good. Good. Happy to hear that. Thank you very much. All right. Excellent. Any questions for Sergeant O'Neill?
As Sergeant, I asked this once before, and they said you're new in here, and I want to find out. Do you and the land patrol touch base? Because from what I understand, there was a couple of jet skis taken and such. Do you communicate, in other words, back and forth, stuff on it?
Yeah, so the way our policy is, so if the vessel is touching water, then we respond to it, unless we're just completely unavailable. So if it's a jet ski stolen, the hat was on a trailer on someone's property, a lot of times the land-based units will get that report. And then we have a info sharing system from the Detective Bureau will tell us that, hey, this report was taken for these jet skis, these are the FL numbers on it, these are what they look like, and to give it to us so that way we can be on the lookout for it in case they're riding around the city.
And that's what I was saying. In other words, if one is taken, let's say, off of a trailer or whatever, and there's a number and stuff on it, so they do report it, or you have the number and stuff on it?
Yeah, the Detective Bureau will send us down be on the lookout for it so that we know to keep our eye out.
Very good.
Any other questions for the Sergeant? No? All right. Thank you very much, sir. Very informative report. All right. Moving on to item 6, which is a dock permit waiver request for 901 Cordova Road. Matthew and Catherine Friedman. Who do we have? Please come up to the podium here and state your name and tell us what's up.
Matthew Friedman. I reside at 901 Cordova Road. Been there for about 11 years.
Hang on, Matt, 1 second. Microphone, is that on? Because I don't know if you can hear him in the back. There we go. Hang on, our sound guy's checking it.
You good? There we go.
There we go. All right, Matt, go ahead and restart, please.
Thank you. Matthew Friedman. I reside at 901 Cordova Road. Bought my house here in Fort Lauderdale about 11 years ago. When we bought the house, there was an existing dock on the seawall. The seawall is owned by the city. As I'm sure all you know, you guys did a great job repairing the seawall and rebuilding it, which left the homeowners to rebuild the dock. So just applying for the permit to rebuild the dock for
Okay.
So we submitted the package, within the format that you guys asked to the Marine Advisory Board, and that's why we're here.
Okay. All right. One of the items I know on the checklist is boat ownership and your own personal boat being put there. I understand that you're in the market right now. You're searching for a boat or buying a boat?
Correct.
Or?
Unfortunately, it's a pretty tough market right now. Obviously, the prices have went up a fair amount on boats, and then from an urgency standpoint that I don't have a place to put it, I wouldn't say I've been the most aggressive in bidding the boats, but obviously as we go through the permitting process and it's near, I plan on getting a little more aggressive.
Okay. And you're aware of all the restrictions as far as penetrating the seawall restrictions and all that as well?
Correct. All the plans have nothing like attaching to the seawall.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the board? Any questions or comments from the public regarding this matter? Hearing none, back to the board. If no questions, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
James Harrison?
Second.
And the second was?
Second.
Norbert? Okay.
Uh,
Any further discussion?
Before you leave, I got a question for you. How long have you been over there since they put the new seawall in?
So the new seawall has probably had about 2 seasons, 1 real season since it's been in. So far, so good. You know, I would say, obviously it depends on if storm's coming or not, if it's really been tested. But so far, so good.
What I was interested in is, because we have a porous lime rock here, that was a new concept kind of by putting those sheets in deep rather than having a concrete seawall. I was interested in whether or not that you had any problem with the tide, the spring tide on coming up through the ground behind the seawall.
So far, haven't really noticed anything. I think it's more just like the table of water sometimes, right? Like, it's not necessarily on the swale right there. I mean, you could see it, maybe your yard is even like a little more moist, but I haven't seen any material problems.
That was a kind of an experiment to find out whether or not that basically would work by putting those sheets down that deep, that we would restrict the amount of water coming up, because if you put another wall behind it, it doesn't make any difference. It actually comes up behind the wall, not necessarily over the wall. So you're saying that you really didn't notice any difference. Now, the tide should have been up above your land behind your wall. So if it was coming up, it would come up behind that, but you didn't notice anything.
Nothing material in the last
Good.
king tide.
That's a good sign. Thank you.
The bigger concern is the tidal valves, right? If they're, blocked for some reason, right? Like it's going above, I mean, that would be the concern as the homeowner right now.
I didn't see the tidal valves they put in there. Are they the kind that you can pull out and clean?
They do monitor them each king tide, but if a branch goes past it and gets in at that point in time, I mean, who knows, right?
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Any other further questions for the applicant from anybody? No? Okay, going back to the board for a vote. We'll do a voice vote on it.
Mr. Witten?
Approved.
Mr. Dennison?
Approved.
Ms. McGowan?
Approved.
Mr. Franks?
Approved?
Mr. Flanagan? Mr. McLaughlin?
Approved.
Mr. Harrison?
Approve.
And Chair Morley?
Approved. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
sir. Appreciate it. All right. Moving right along, our next dock permit request, item 7, was actually withdrawn, so we do not have that tonight.
That's correct. They withdrew today. They plan to come back next month.
Okay, excellent. Looking forward to that. All right, which moves us to old and new business. So, does anyone have any old or new business they want to present tonight and discuss?
One of the things I'd like to discuss, in the last couple of months, we had instances where, if I'm reading correctly, on Article 5 and the division of, it's actually 8-91, is the restriction, the 30% rule and stuff over there. Well, it used to be 30% or 30 feet, whichever is the least. However, once somebody comes in for a variance, there is no restriction on the size of the vessel. So if you get if you build a dock, like for instance, using an example, the last couple of months, a person had a 70-foot boat in there and put the dock and stuff over there. The point that I was trying to get across is I got a notice that if the person was in violation of the code, that they could be reported. But they're not in violation of the code according to this until they would approach the 30% rule. So, which means that that person could basically put an 80-footer in there, and so could the person across the canal, and they would still be, by my calculations, on the size of that canal, they would be within 1.5 feet of hitting the 30% line. So I could call code till I'm blue in the face, but they're not in violation of that code by putting a larger boat in there. The reason I said that is because We even had come before the board, people said, I will never put a boat in there bigger than a 60-footer. We've had them since this board had it. We also refused one or two where a person had a 50-footer, and they said, well, we're never going to put a larger boat in there. Well, I went looking at some of those that I know that we put restrictions on. Actually, we put a restriction on them here in the board that they said they would never put anything more than a 65-foot boat in there. That one has an 85-footer in there, and guess what? One of them has one that's a Westport, 112 feet that goes in there. Still, the canal's over 40 feet wide or 400 feet wide, so they're not in any violation. So there's no restriction to stop that person unless it actually goes and it's in enforcement somehow. The Marine Patrol can't enforce that because it's not a code violation. They're not in violation whatsoever because there's no restriction on how far that you can put the vessel out, not to my knowledge. So that person can actually put an 80-footer or 81 point something or other and still be within the 30-foot range that he had. Another example, the two people that were on this board over here were on there when the Icon cried up a blue streak. We told them that they should keep their river walk on their property. They went and they got an easement that they could get out 20 feet or whatever it was. When they came before the board, we actually said, I tell you what, we'll give you that permit. We'll okay it. You put a railing there and change it from dockage to walkway. Neither one of them went on the permit. I saw the permit that the contractor put on, no railing, and it's in there as a dock. All right? So what causes them to stay within the restriction that they agreed to? And that's the question that I want to bring up on old business. Unless that code is changed, that it goes before the building department, that restriction is put on there, what good is it? Anybody else have a comment? That's
So
what I want to bring.
One of the things that I'm curious about is when a waiver is granted, this is probably a really silly question. What happens to the waiver? Is it recorded the same way there might be a deed restriction? So if we restrict the size of a boat, it is enforceable?
Correct. There's a resolution which is signed by the mayor, which results in an enforceable restriction, limitation on the size of a boat if it's written into the resolution as a condition of the resolution.
But is it recorded on the land record as we would typically see with any type of zoning issue? In other words, it's a restriction on your property that you are limited to a certain size boat, the same way we would have any restrictions on our physical property as well. So the question is the waiver recorded so anybody that's purchasing the property is aware that there is a restriction on it?
Yes, in the form of a resolution tied to the property.
So then per Norbert, the issue is just enforcing it, I guess.
I should say that we've shied away from conditional resolutions which restrict vessel size over the years. There have been some. And I'm certain that if you were to give me the address where this is taking place, I could report it through code and it could be enforced.
So,
Well, what I was basically saying is, where did that resolution go on the Icon? I mean, it's not on their plans or anything else. So you're telling me that if we went back in time, we could look over there where it was passed with a resolution that it'd have to have a railing and it would no dockage? That's how it was presented to this board, and this board approved it with those conditions. Where did those conditions wind up going?
There's a 108-page environmental permit which includes the language that you're referring to of a walkway as opposed to a dock, the installation of a fence, not a fence, but a rail system, and the installation of no dockage signage at that location. Where it went is a good question. That's something that I think we're talking about now, and I can get the answers to from the proper city staff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I went to find out where did that restriction goes. And the reason I know that, there's two people here on the board that were on when we put the restriction. So I'm not blowing smoke up in the air where I'm saying that a railing and a walkway was the design of that. So those people reneged on that deal and stuff on there. Now, if they reneged, what Barry brought up last couple of months was the fact that where is the rail? And we haven't heard anything in 2 or 3 months about the rail and stuff over there, so everybody's dodging that question. And what I'm saying to you is somewhere in the archives it's written that they were supposed to have that restriction and stuff. Where is it? And how do I find it?
I do agree that there should be a rail there to restrict dockage at that location. What we've been made aware of this week, and I've distributed to the board, is a request for an adjustment to the permit to allow for 4 40-foot slips at that site. I think that the fact that the rail isn't there now ties to this request, and I've distributed this to the board for discussion.
But I mean, can they research that by if it was a communication to the commission or something, to research the fact that it was brought to this board and brought to the commission that there was to be a rail and it was to be classified as a walkway rather than a dock? If the commission were to check into that and find out that, yes, that restriction should have put in there, then before they could even think about putting a dock in there, they'd have to get rid of the stipulation above the rail and the dockage, correct?
Yes, and I would suggest that be in the form of a communication to the commission if that's the direction you wish to go.
I don't know. So what you people want to do is find out why that restriction was not put on the icon.
Well, let's discuss it as a group and look at that. If that's the way to go, or if we should talk about these 4 40-foot slips that they're requesting the variance on, or at least modification on, not a variance, correction, a modification on. I'd like to get some more input from the board, and then we'll open up to the public for any comments on the icon project specifically, since we're here to address that as well as old business. So does anybody else on the board have any information or conversation or comments on the icon project, either historical or current request to modify their slips, or to put in slips, I should say? Barry?
Got microphone now? Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Norb, a lot of this started several years ago. The board has always been opposed to anything at the icon/Riverwalk that reflected a dock. The issue that hopefully we can discuss this evening reflects that the applicant, which is one of the corporate names for Icon, has requested a modification to the submerged land lease. They want to put 4 areas in for docking. The existing conditions, and I think Andrew's passed out, everybody got one of these? Huh? The public notice that was sent out to all of us, and I think Andrew's going to pass them out again. They refer, project site is the existing Riverwalk pedestrian walkway. That's where it's identified one time as a walkway, sometimes it's identified as a dock.
Thank you.
Going into page 2, the existing permit that this construction was initially, the Riverwalk or the walkway was built under, that permit expired in July of 21 last year. The comment is made in here by the Army Corps, all of the authorized work has been completed. I find that is an incorrect statement. Authorized work was not completed, and you'll see on the attachment specific conditions 15 that within 10 days of completion of the dock construction, permanent handrails and no mooring signs will be installed along all portions of the 3,553 lineal feet kind of hard not to miss 3,500 lineal feet of handrail. But all authorized work has been completed. As I said earlier, I take exception to that. If you go down 2 more paragraphs, the proposed project is for the modification of use of an existing dock. There is no existing dock there. It's a walkway, a river walk installed as a walkway. Turning over to the next page on their application, under navigation, provided by the applicant, the waterward edge of the proposed structure is more than 100 feet away from the near bottom edge of the new river channel. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not a surveyor. It may or may not be, but based upon some of their other statements, I would certainly feel it's questionable. You go down 2 more paragraphs. This is pretty alarming. The public notice is being issued based on information furnished by the applicant. That's very heartwarming. The information has not been verified or evaluated to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. But yet they're asking us to go ahead and provide them with use of this applicant's application. That brings us through to several pages of legalese and explanations. There's also easements that were created going back as far as 2014, when this first started to surface, and in 2015. And reviewing some of them in detail yesterday, it's clear to this layman and a few other lay people who have looked at it that the entity filing for the application, Loika, will have control of the docking along the waterway as the grantor, and the grantee, being the city and or the public, will not have access or use to this walkway, or what's trying to be a dock. One easement is granted in 2014, another one was granted in 2015. I'm not legalese to know whether one succeeds the other. I think what we have to go on is the basis of this application in front of us. There is an address. I have spoken to 4 different staff people who started this permit application when Lee Feldman was here, starting with Sophia Dimitrova, and there's been four other people since her. Never once have I had a return phone call, and it was potluck if they picked the phone up and could discuss the issue of what are we doing, and it's frustrating. I've sent information and requested of the city manager what position is the city. I've received a reply that the city is not aware of activity going on, and yet I find that hard to believe that the city is not aware as to this application, because there is that what they call request RIA, is government speak for request additional information, has been generated by somebody in this building, and yet nobody seems to know who or what.
So let me ask him here, Barry, and maybe Andrew, you're a better person to answer this. And looking at this communication as public notice from the Army Corps, they reference their permit that was issued July 14, 2016, and they state that that permit has expired in July of 21, and the applicant is requesting a modification to that existing permit. To me, in the past, dealing with Army Corps permits, when they expire, they've got to be reapplied for or reopened. So that, to me, right there is, why aren't they asking for a reopening of that permit or a new issuance of a permit? And if they're asking for construction of docks within city limits, I would think that that would come before the building department, this committee, and the city commission to be looked at, since this is a modification to an existing condition. Everything I see on the Chappelle Group's presentation refers to it as a pedestrian walkway, everywhere.
Well, the
Big issue
latest
we
ones
had-
show dockage now.
Yeah, now they show it as
And,
dockage.
and putting hand railing up in between.
Yeah.
There's, I think, coming down to the application that is in front of us, we have the right and have been invited to make our comments known to this party. She's provided her phone number, her email, and we won't have time, while I'd like to see the board go for another communication to the commission. That takes like 2 weeks to get through. Our clock's ticking, so if any of us or all of us, hopefully, will take a few minutes and just express your feelings of opposition to the electronic mail address that she's provided. I have been told that this doesn't have to come to us or the city. If the Army Corps grants this, all they need to do is get a building permit, put some type of a bumper thing on front of the dock, maybe some anchor or whatever, and that's the end of that. So I think it's about the safety, trying to unravel this complex list of easements and right-of-ways and the permits. Yes, there's also language in here, Ted, that if you haven't completed something, you can't apply for something additional.
Right.
Now, the argument they'll offer is, well, that permit expired, we're going for a new one. Well, okay. I think the safety is the main thing for us to try to emphasize. And that has been in the past supported by our own Marine units, by Coast Guard, and certainly the industry public, the commercial traffic that go up and down that river. I want to show some pictures of that commercial traffic. Andrew, can you?
Well,
There, huh?
You know, and Barry, to that point, in the past, this project, when it was originally discussed, and Norbert, to your point, these handrails were a safety issue for the pedestrians. They've called it a pedestrian walkway.
Yeah.
It was approved as a pedestrian walkway. So the safety of the pedestrians walking on the walkway is why the railings had to be there. The railings also serve the purpose, along with the signs that say no mooring, of keeping navigation open on the new river, correct?
Yeah.
That was the whole idea. This is an area of the river that is very tight for commercial traffic, and the whole concern from the commercial industry, the marine industry of associated with this, as well as this board, was adding slips there originally would have impeded the safety of navigation. And that's a safety concern that we have to concern with.
Well, there was also a $10,000 per day fine for work not completed. Now,
Yeah.
who signed off on it? Nobody seems to know who signed off on it.
That's a good question, too.
Question. Hey, Barry, are you saying, though, that the commission, even if we do a communication, is not going to be able to read it, to do anything about it? So
I don't
it's
think the
pointless,
time
or-
frame will allow us, because we have, two weeks left on? So any replies, phone calls have to
10
be
days.
in, but we wouldn't get the communication by the commission. And that's
So-
why I was asking if we can all do this individually, and you can identify that you're on the Marine Board, and we'll certainly hope the commission will look at our.
So, Andrew, let me put that to you, since you're our liaison with the city commission. Let's speak to that, please.
So I kind of agree with what Barry's saying on page 4. There's an email address at the very top for
Right. The Paula
Paula,
Bracci.
and she's in West Palm Beach. So there's a phone number there as well.
Yeah.
If you CC me, along with sending the email to her, rather than sending it to the whole board, send it to her and CC me. I'll gather them together, and I'll once the emails have been sent in, I'll send an email to the director and let him know that there's this opposition's been expressed.
So, I have another thing. Andrew, I had written, because after reading what was sent out, I wrote what I thought was going to be a communication to the commission However, I'd like to distribute this to our board, just to maybe get, and we could read this, discuss it a little bit, so we're all kind of beating the same drum
Yeah.
of what we're asking for, what we're asking them, which is really about safety and navigation and the history of this project.
Right.
You know, as well.
Thank you, Andrew.
I go back again to asking, we started asking whether waivers are recorded. Obviously, the approval on a project the size of Icon, those approvals were clearly recorded on the land. And any restricted covenant, such as a life safety issue as critical as the handrails, if it was approved, should have been recorded. And if it was recorded, then I'm going back again and saying somebody should be enforcing it. And if you enforce it, then you're going to muddy up the water with this approval. And this application, by the way, is absolute nonsense. It has no credibility whatsoever. It basically says, as Ted pointed out, it was Barry pointed out, that the public notice, the information has not been verified or evaluated to ensure compliance. It's not, basically not ensured that any of the information provided by the applicant is correct. I mean, it's nonsense. There's just no way, again, that we can allow something like this to happen, again, without making a strong statement.
See, we never see the final, like for instance, you look at the dock, you see these beautiful architectural rendering and everything else goes on there, how the pile are, everything else and stuff, which I'd say probably 80% of the people have no knowledge of. However, when the permit is issued and the permit goes out, I go look at it and everything else don't look at anything like what we were proposed here. So we don't really get to see a final of what something looks like, period. And it does not come back before this board. That's the thing. If we would have had the plans for the Icon, we would have noticed that there was no railing on it. I just noticed right away there was no railing on it. When it was built, I had asked at that time I was not working for the contractor and stuff, or not dealing with them. And I said, where's the rail? And they said, there is no rail. They let me look at the plans. They couldn't have any. I was trying to get a set of them. And I was looking at plans. There is no rail on it. So what you were saying is basically it was approved with the rail, but the rail never made it, what I was trying to tell Andrew, it never made it to whoever draws up the plans and stuff on it. So they're altogether different than what we see here, what are presented to us. We made a stipulation, I want to say quite a few years ago, that if there was more than a certain amount of change on any plans, that it would have to come back before this board. I haven't seen that ever happen again either. So there was plans. One was at Las Olas Marina and things on that order where there was basic changes, and we never got to see the change. They just went to planning and whatever, and that's what it is.
So I guess my question is, that's an interesting point. So the rail was approved as part of, because I wasn't on the board then, so the rail was approved by you guys a handful of years ago. It wasn't approved by the city when the city approved the building?
No, that's
not accurate. I don't know how that's
not
I'll tell you
accurate.
how
That's what I'm trying to understand.
So Barry, you have,
There were plans that were submitted. It never came to this board. Let's get that straightened real quick. The plan and that's specific conditions, number 15, that relates to an item in the plan that was approved, happens to be a railing. The railings were not put up. It was intentional. And it wasn't like, you can't go back and, file a waiver or something. A waiver has nothing to do with this. It's what was approved in a building permit that has now since expired. They're trying to create a 4 docking areas under their control. And when you get into all these different easements, they may have a leg to stand on that they don't have to come to us, because some of these agreements clearly point out them as the grantor, and DDA, which is a quasi-funded part of the city, do have the authority to make application for improvements, et cetera, maintenance. And I, again, can't follow the dots on it. But what we can do, I think, is safety. And these pictures, I think, will especially those who have not been on the board long, will realize what we're dealing with. And don't forget, we also had a U.S. retired admiral from the Coast Guard who came here. We took him around on a water taxi, and he never saw such commercial traffic in a given area as what he saw. Now, he was here dealing with the bridge, or the railroad bridge, but his comments about the amount of traffic going up and down this river was just, and he was in charge of 18,000 bridges in the country before he retired.
Yeah.
Can we see those pictures? And then, okay, there's, it's not an oligarch's yacht. It happens to be, belonging to the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But we're fortunate enough to have this kind of activity, and that's what, 146 feet, I think, or 246 feet, rather.
214?
Going, there she is turning around Little Florida. That's pretty impressive when you see the towboats pulling and her little tenders in the back at the top page there. This is all traffic that came up the river over the tunnel. Go ahead. This was a unique picture that was taken the first time. There were 5 large yachts all being towed at the same time between Courtney and Jimmy Steele. And they, in their communication, agreed that they would pass each other at the tunnel, not at the Wiggles, not down at Tarpon Bend, but at the tunnel in the case that they needed to step aside or stop or whatever. And that would be to the left of us. This picture was taken in early December last year. There's one showing the Caribbean coming in and a boat being towed out. To the starboard side on the Caribbean would be the docking area that they're proposing along the walkway. The Caribbean's dock is straight forward under that blue tent that you see there. There's a ticket tent. That's one being towed down the river. This is interesting that most people are not aware of. The city has a fueling and a pump out station on the south side of the river just before you get to the tunnel. There's also a shoaled up area just off the bow, the starboard side of this yacht's bow. Why is that placed there? Well, that's where the commercial traffic can turn around and not be interfering with anybody when the city chose that area. This area is intentionally set for the commercial activity of the Caribbean or any of the boats that are going up and down the river. And by turning around here, they don't have to go further up to Performing Arts and go through 2 bridges and turn around and have the traffic impacted. So the city laid this out intentionally. It wasn't by coincidence. And that boat is on the fuel dock there. Here's a picture of a boat tied up to the walkway right now, unattended and illegal. Here's another activity going on. Unloading and picking up on the tiki boat on the walkway there. Now, it's interesting, if nobody is out there to stop this now, what makes us think that 4 slips with boats rafted off on a Saturday afternoon? It's pretty imagination going on there. Is that it? Well, this was just taken 2 Sundays ago. You see how close they're coming to the walkway. I have it in my phone, and I'm not real. It's kind of challenging, but there's a video of the Caribbean 3 weeks ago, I think it was. During that time, we had heavy winds. They were coming in on their 3 o'clock run, outbound traffic was all of a sudden around the corner, nobody had called in. And they went in, from the picture, it was probably 7 feet off the dock where they went in at a last minute call that they had to make, they were committed to come in, but the winds were blowing so bad, blowing them over in the outbound traffic. I guess that's it.
You know, Barry, I think these pictures really demonstrate and sort of reiterate to all of us the traffic that we see on the river. And a lot of folks don't realize that the marine industry of South Florida, this is a multi-billion-dollar commercial enterprise that we operate in South Florida. This waterway is the lifeblood of those commercial operations upriver. And again, going back to what our board mission is to study and recommend on every aspect of the waterways of the city, not just dock waivers, not just permits and things, but in all activities. So I think it is certainly within our purview as a committee, as a board, to communicate not only to our city commission, either through official documents, official communications, or indirectly, but also to, as Andrew mentioned, as you mentioned, communicating to the Corps of Engineers here directly through that point of contact and providing them information. Because if their only source of information on when they vote on something like this at the Army Corps is communication received from the public, I think it's important that they understand what they're dealing with here, because they're not down here. They don't see these 200-foot plus yachts going up and down a river being towed by commercial towboats. They don't see commercial passenger vessels operating on the river within a meter or two of this proposed location. Putting vessels there will directly impact the safety of navigation of the new river. And I think that's a major issue. I'd like to, if possible, Andrew, can I have open it to the public and have comments from the public at this point? Because I think it's important that people that are here actually speak their mind. And patients, I'd like to know pretty much what the Marine Industry Association of South Florida feels about this and what concerns you guys have, because you really are the communication pathway to that multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's important that we hear that. Can you come up to the podium maybe and state your name for the record and offer some insight? I hate to put you on a spot, but I appreciate you being here for it.
I have a couple of pictures of it here, Ted.
Oh,
This
okay.
this picture that's on there right now, this is a picture that was taken pre-Icon. Now, what you're looking at a boat outgoing that's on there. The boat that's ingoing, you can see there's a towboat attached to that. That is where the Icon's dock is right now, or walkway is right now. That's so now you figure if that walkway is out 20 feet more, that boat is actually out into the river a lot more. This is pre-Icon.
Right.
All right, so that's where a boat has to lay over for that. This is another shot, something of that same vessel that's going out and that's going on the river, being towed up the river and stuff over there. Why any kind of restriction is basically taboo. Again, here's where the Icon is now, and that shows the section of the Icon. This showing that boat that is going up the river. That's pre-Icon. Now, what basically you can see the carry B that's right over there to its starboard side, and there's where the Icon's walkway is. Stranahan House sitting over to the far right and stuff over there. So the dock now, or the walkway now, goes from the back of the carry B all the way across there, and you can see actually how much it's encroached, and they want to encroach on it more.
No, I think all these show just how tight the area is, and we know from personal experience, and Mr. Franks, you're new to the committee, but you know this is very well too.
This
There's
is
not many
another
spots
shot.
you can do this.
Yep.
And these spots, Norbert, we need these spots in the New River where two vessels can safely
Here's
navigate.
here's the towboats, and you can see how he's pulling against the carry B. And this is before the Icon. The Icon, you can see I wrote up there on the corner where it says Icon. Right now, if you visualize that walkway is from the carry B, and it goes all the way around that outside and stuff over there. And to put docks actually on the outside of that, and what Barry was talking about way over there on that boat's starboard side, behind the stern of the other one is where that pump out station is. If there was a boat in that pump out station, and that walkway was in there, there's no way in the world that or the jungle plane or anything else was out around that turn of that river.
No, I agree. And I'm a licensed captain. I'm unlimited tonnage. I drive ships and large yachts, and I can tell you, safety of navigation would definitely be affected at these areas for any times of extreme tide, current, winds, traffic anything like that. We're seeing bigger and bigger vessels coming and going on the New River, and that's really what I want patients to speak to when you're done with your pictures here and presenting these. Which is, these are incredible visuals for us to see.
I have to hand it to those sailboat guys and stuff. It's miraculous how they don't hit more.
Yeah, but that's my concern, is we're gonna see more accidents and more injuries and more property damage if we continue to allow larger and larger dock projects to come into these areas. So patience, if you don't mind stating your name for the record and kind of giving us your ideas here. Oh, microphone's not working, or? Hang on, he's coming up. IT support. We all want to hear it, that's for sure.
Thank you. It's Patience Con, Marine Industries Association of South Florida. And I've been with the association 17 years, so I'm pretty familiar with a bit of the history. And prior to that, I was yacht crew on large vessels.
Excellent.
When we got this, before we got the notice of public, the attorney that represents ICON had arranged to walk the docks with us and show us that he wanted to build docks. And in an effort not to just say no, we identified 2 areas that had indents that fall behind because of the curvature. They fall into the curvature, and we said, well, if you do one here and one here, you get 2 slips. That's the best we can see. We're concerned that the nature of your business is going to have people rafting off and encroaching further into the river. And he's like, oh, these boats aren't even going to be 10 feet wide. But we said, well, we don't agree with what you want to do. But if you modify it to these 2 small spaces, we can support it. And we went away believing that we had an understanding. And that was 6-8 months ago. It was a while ago. And then when the public notice came out and it wasn't what we had asked for, then we felt like we had to object to the whole thing and back it off so that we could find a solution if there was a solution to be found.
Understand, okay.
We've written a letter of comment already and submitted. I believe I shared it with, I believe it's been shared with you. I also shared it with the commission, and I will tell you that 3 of our commissioners have asked what we want them to do. So I have the ability to tell them what I think that I heard from. I waited to hear what their experts had, and tomorrow I can write an email that says, this is what I heard, this is the steps that we probably need to take next. So you don't have to really wait to get your message across. Okay. I am very concerned. Mr. Franks probably should be as concerned as I am, since his business is impeded as by boats that go to his yard, about how difficult it is getting to get up the river.
Yeah.
And a couple of months ago, I sent you a YouTube video that was unsolicited, of a captain bringing a smaller boat, a 116-foot boat, up the river, and he's talking about how you have to watch for the tugs and things. And one of the things he says all the time is how the river is getting smaller because of the boats encroaching on him.
Right.
This is we can't just, it's important that the industry have slips for these boats, but if they can't get around and we can't get to the boat yards, it's going to impact our business more than one guy not being able to put his 80-foot boat behind the dock, or a restaurant to be able to have dockage outside their door. We have plenty of dockage downtown. It's really not that far to get from the floating docks that the city's put in that are courtesy docks, meant so that you can come downtown, tie
Absolutely.
up, and walk down. I'm very frustrated by this, because I think that it's been misrepresented in the application, and technically the industry's the only one saying that's commented on this, so.
Okay. Well, you talk about the space on the New River being impeded by vessels on both sides, and it's not just the space. I talk to a lot of guys, towboat operators and operators that come up and down the river, and as the vessels have increased alongside the various docks and piers that have been added, they're seeing an increase in current flow also, because you can talk about the laminar flow of water. X amount of water has got to go through the New River per second. And when you have vessels that have draft, that are displacing water, that's narrowing the amount of area you have, so that laminar flow increases in certain areas, thereby increasing the risk of accidents, increasing the risk of needing to call Sergeant O'Neill and find things, and causing even more problems.
And
So
I-
it's
and
not
I-
just space, it's
I
all
com-
the conditions together.
I completely agree with you, and this is something that the normal people that don't go boating can understand. If you run water between two spoons, the water pulls the spoons
spoons
together.
together. Yep.
It's called the carrier effect, and that's what happens when two boats pass each other and they get to that point where they're too close. That can happen, and
Absolutely.
it's very dangerous. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that the railroad bridge on top of the Bright Line, which now is closed more than open, and it's working for us. I mean, that's not the issue. But when the railroad bridge is closed, Andrews has the permission not to open. So the collection area for the boats waiting for the bridge to open
Backs
is
up.
right there.
Yeah.
And the reason it's right there is because there's room for them to sit and maneuver.
Well, I think, this board has right now, I look at it, I look around the room, I think it's an amazing collection of experts. I think Norbert is probably one of the most well-educated, well-informed guys on marine construction that we have ever had. I value his input tremendously. Jimmy's input, Steve's, Mr. Frank, you're coming at a great time to step into this. We all have our areas of expertise when it comes to the marine environment, and we need that area of expertise to really form the big picture. Because as you said, a lot of folks may not be aware of everything that goes on. And whether you're going up the river for commercial work or recreational work, I don't really care. It's the safety of that river that this board's concerned about. And that's really our impetus behind our communications, is the safety of navigation and the ability of the citizens of Fort Lauderdale to enjoy the New River, the businesses to use it, and have safe, effective commerce on it. So that's our big push here. So I think anything we can do to inform the Army Corps in this project, I think is important. But I think it's also important that we do communicate to our city commissioner and advise them of what we collectively, as experts in our field, feel this would do to the river. I know it's frustrating sometimes, and I've shared that frustration with the board. We've all had our frustrating moments with communications, and they're not always adhered to. Ours is to recommend, not dictate. So it's all we can do is use our expertise. Pictures paint a heck of a presentation. And I think the more pictures that people can see on this, that's what really drives it home. Because you can say, well, you've got to maneuver a 214-foot yacht around the corner with two tugboats. Yeah, okay. Happens all the time. We don't ever see Sergeant O'Neill out there writing tickets to these guys, but they must do it safely. Well, they do it safely because they're highly skilled professionals that do this, but they have areas to stage in. They have areas to pass in. And the more we restrict those areas, the worse it's going to be, the more dangerous it's going to be.
Well, a vessel of about 140 feet in 2016, the economic impact to a visit to a yard was $466,000. So the more difficult that boat is to get up the river, they're global and they're mobile. They don't need to come here.
Right.
And everybody wants what we have.
Yep. This is supposed to be the yachting, the Venice of America, the yachting capital of the world. And if we're not careful, we are in jeopardy of losing that to other cities, other states, and other areas. We have to protect this economy. We have to protect the industry that we've all come to enjoy as a city. So thank you very much.
I think they have to, I think what we do is what I've always considered. I consider the New River as a commercial river first and a recreational river second. Like the Middle River, these little tributaries and everything else are recreational, water skiing and everything else. But I could visualize somebody trying to water ski in the New River or something over there, right? So I'm saying this is more
I
of
learned to water ski
a
in the New
commercial
River,
river because they're going from point A to point B to have work done, and I'm talking millions of dollars of work and stuff done. And that's why I really have a problem with anything obstruction in the New River as opposed to any of the other ones. Any of the other ones I'm looking at it say, okay, fine, this shouldn't be like Henderson's Island stuff over there is fine. There's not any construction or anything else going on there back and forth. So basically the thing I was saying is I kind of look at the new river as saying that's off limits, protecting the marine industry.
Much like the Miami River in Miami, commercial centric. Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments for Patience while she's with us here?
I guess that you've obviously lit a fire to some degree, and my question is for the board and everyone involved is versus, in a few minutes, that adjourns this and pick it up a month from now. How do we work together to get this message out? And part of it starts with Andrew's suggestion last month. Safe to say we had a bit of a shakeup here, and Andrew's message was communicate to your commissioners. And it seems to me that we've got to be working with our commissioners and hopefully show some joint support with you, et cetera. Is that something that makes some sense to you?
I do think that one of the responsibilities of this board, if there's an issue in front of the board that's going to the commission and it's of concern that you want it to go, somebody representing the board needs to be in the room when they make that decision so that you can answer the questions. Staff can answer the question, but that's not like hearing from you. And I really think that you take turns or you discuss it or you figure it out, but one of you has to be in the room and say, I'm from the Marine Advisory Board and this is what we discussed and this is why we discussed it.
One of the things that I want to do as the new chair of MAB here, and I want to thank all the previous chairs for their service. They've all done an amazing job getting us to this point. It's an evolving job. And, my background's regulations. My background is dealing with a lot of things that deal with changing regs. So I'm used to this world, this dynamic world. I would like to ask my fellow board members if we as a group could collectively come up with a schedule to where I go to commission meetings, our vice chair goes to commission meetings. If we're not able to, we have other board members that can go to commission meetings. But if we have to commit to that as a group to really make sure that what we do here, because I think what we do here has tremendous value. I think our time is important, but what we do here is even more important. I believe we make a difference. That difference only gets done if it gets heard.
I think that's great, Ted, and I would hope that if they see us going to their meetings, maybe they would come to our meeting too.
I've mentioned it to the mayor. I'd like an open invitation to him anytime, to any of the commissioners to come here, especially the ones that aren't in the marine districts. I think it's important that they understand more about the marine side of it and really get that education and information, but we have to do that.
So at this point, the big challenge is that the city isn't really going to be able to move the needle on this point.
No.
At this point. So it's kind of past where we are right now. Yep. So this is a great conversation, but right now the issue in front of us is the Army Corps, who
Yep.
also answers to Congress.
Yep.
They are a member of the Armed Services, and they have bosses as well in the congressional staff with the Senate and the U.S. Congress. So also, reaching out to that side because they have to talk to somebody else. So I think all these other things are great, but I think definitely stepping on this right now, us talking to the city is great. We've voiced our concerns to the city multiple times since I've been on this board,
Yeah.
and we're still back here again.
Yep.
And so right now, the big point is putting on the big stick to the U.S. Army Corps.
Well, that's where I think,
and
Andrew,
to
your
the
comment-
congressional office and Senate. I mean,
Yep.
I'll find out who those people are, and we can I think Senator Rick Scott's on the Senate Armed Services Committee, but I don't know if they answered to them in that particular area. So.
Well, anything we can do to get the Army Corps informed on this, and that's where I think, can we send these pictures to them in an email from us? So, I mean, that's where I think it's going to be helpful. I think getting this contact here, getting her the information, getting her not only our objections, but also some justification of our objections. So it's not just, I don't like this idea because. No, I don't like this idea because, and here's Exhibit A, B, and C that show the safety of navigation and this particular area, how restricted it is, and why this is so important to keep open in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely.
We've got to do that. We've got to get the information out. We certainly do. And I think we all have to do that independently here. So let's.
I don't disagree with Jimmy's thing of sending something to the commission just for the record.
Yep.
But at this point,
Well, on this issue, it's rather, it's not really in their band camp.
the boat's out the,
I want,
the slipping down the dock.
From
Yeah, but
my time here, I want to make sure that we,
Yep.
moving forward collectively, I know it's more time, guys. I know it's hard to commit to our time. Believe me, I'm right there with you. I've worked 60, 70 hours a week, but I believe in what we do. I think it's important. And I think if we show that to the commission by supporting our decisions and going to their meetings, I'd love to get them in ours, Jimmy. I really would.
Yeah, Ted, one thing also, if patients, if you're going to be able to reach out to the commissioners, especially the ones that replied to you, would be to actually ask the commissioners to contact that person also at the Army Corps as well, because they can do that. And so that would be an ask of us, would be, hear our voice and please respond, because otherwise this is going to happen without them, which I know that our commissioners do like to have the power over the city, which is what their job is. So
And this is a question and not, they still have to get a building permit, right?
Yeah.
So is there a mechanism that stops that? Because technically they don't have the right to build docks, so can they?
So you've made the city manager aware of this concern?
Yes.
And the commission aware of the concern. And that would be a question for the city manager as far as the mechanisms to stop any issuance of a permit. I'm not familiar with that exact process.
Good question to ask directly to the city manager, Patience, from the
Yeah.
IMSF, I think.
because also one of the interesting things, not a safety or navigation issue, but it's the way that this is actually happening is, well, they can't have the docks in their backyard, but they're going to have control over the docks in Stranahan House's backyard.
Right.
So, it's like kind of, how does that work? How does someone have control over your backyard and the people and access to your property, as well? So I don't get that.
No, me neither.
That is what they're asking.
I look at the whole thing, and I agree with Steve. I think the whole application is just ridiculous. It needs to be looked at heavily by those that are looking at it.
It became a core joint permit, but the condition 15 is actually a DEP condition.
Right.
So it's not really the core that's permit wasn't complied with, it's DEP.
It's the EP that wasn't, yeah. Okay. All right, I think we've got a direction here. Again, my goal is make sure it's safety navigation first. As much as I love seeing Sergeant O'Neill in here every month, I like to hear less and less accidents, not more and more. And the New River is certainly an area of concern for us. So I think if we all collectively communicate to the Army Corps on this, and in future issues, let's enhance our communication and our presence with the City Commission and make sure that our voices are heard and that our frustrations are actually explained in a way that is cogent and that they can look at and see. And again, go back to what our job is. Our job here is to study and recommend to our commission. And I think we have to take that very seriously and present it very seriously to them if we want to be treated seriously about it. It's not just dock waivers, it's all activities in the water that we've got a voice in. So, I want to push for that, and I hope the board does with me. I think it's a great use of our time, and we're passionate about this industry. This is how we all make our living, we all make our lives here. And it's, we all live in Fort Lauderdale, we all enjoy the water. And let's do what we can to keep and protect it. So, any other comments on this issue?
It's interesting, the mention the shakeup, because the last meeting we had guys who and they left, and we all know it was because they felt they were wasting time.
Right.
There's nobody here sitting at any of these tables that has any desire to waste their time.
No.
So we're all taking it seriously. Bob's kind enough to call in. So my suggestion is, and said to Norbert, who's frustrated beyond frustration, is that we all agree we're going to remount our energy and see if we can make this effective. And per Andrew's suggestion, I met Steve Glassman after the last meeting and shared some of my concerns and thoughts. And he said, why don't we have a joint meeting with you guys? So if they're willing to do that, I'll be more than happy to call their bluff, because I think that would be a game changer if we can all kind of talk together and really understand the direction.
Steve, I think that if we do all respond to the Army Corps as we're going to do and copy Andrew, that the ammunition of, asking for a meeting when, look, this is how involved we are,
Yeah.
what we're doing, if we're all, communicating with them, trying to do that, which would be a big statement, I think.
I think so too.
And I can get those pictures tonight from Barry. I can scan them to the group so they can include them in their emails to the Corps.
That'd be fantastic.
I can't get the picture.
There's licensing rights there, right, Barry? No, I want to thank you guys both, you and Norbert, for bringing us pictures, because it paints a picture that we can't describe. It's amazing to see. All right, so nothing else on this issue then?
Yeah, I just got
We've got a course of action to take, Mr. Franks?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Like I say, I've been going up and down the river for years and years, and when I worked for the city, I was around the river a lot and observed a lot of boating and what people were doing. A couple of things, Kerry B., I think he's maybe 100 feet long. He spins around right in that space. If he doesn't have that space, he can't spin around.
Right.
And I think some of the folks mentioned when you have wind and current, you don't have a whole lot of margin.
Nope.
You got to have that space available. Yachts are passing by each other. You have to have the space. If I'm coming up the river on a boat and I see Jungle Queen coming toward me, I want to go to that pocket.
Yep.
I don't want to meet the Jungle Queen head on. So we need to have that space. A couple of things. If you look at that further up the river, west of Andrews, you have the place called Society. You've got that dock where you'll see all the small boats. I think it was, last summer, I think we put up signs on the outside of the dock pilings on this side, no docking. I mean, pretty clear, no docking, no docking, no docking. I've got a photograph of, I think, about 25 boats all laid up there, some laid up with each other. That's the same thing you're gonna have over there where Icon is.
Absolutely.
Guarantee you, you're gonna have the same thing. Where's the enforcement? You go to find somebody on the boat, well, guess what? They're not there. How do you find them? And with the Society over there, I think we had somebody that went there one day and some guy claimed he was the dock master. It's city property. Like, what? So there's some issues there. The other thing, just in towing boats, I've got the challenge and pleasure and fun of towing boats around Bradford's on one of the towboats. And what you have there is you have a lead boat and a guy on the back boat. The guy on the front boat doesn't see what's happening in the back. The guy on the back boat doesn't see what's happening in the front. You're blocked. You've got limited visibility. So you've got to have some good communication, and there's bits of challenges. When you got people on the river and their jet skis and the weekend warriors and all those people, it makes it really, really tough to safely bring these boats up and down the river. If you're going to make it real narrow like that, it just, well, from the photos that Barry had, it's going to make it impossible.
Yeah.
So need to keep in mind that, if you could bring the commercial boats up, it's a bit of a challenge.
I think all these points, if they get communicated, when we make our communications to the Army Corps and various people, again, going back to the expertise that's in this room, use that expertise, use that knowledge to paint a picture, use those pictures to reinforce it, and get that communication out in support of this issue. So, Great. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate your insight.
I got one more thing. And
Jimmy?
that is, as you just talked about enforcement, and that's something that, we get a lot of applications where it's like, well, you're only allowed to put a certain size boat, in there, and we're only going to do this, and then whatever happens after that. We have right now 5, I believe, Marine Patrol on duty. We have, so that's it for the whole city, of everything. And so, like on the Coral Castle, the 5 dock, waiver that went in there, my concern there was that it was safe for so many years at the size dock they had, and they want to do a bigger dock. Well, what's the idea? You're going to put a bigger boat in there.
Right.
Well, that's not going to be legal. Okay, it's all about enforcement, at that point. Same thing as we have floating docks that are along the New River now that, this board, had put in. And, there's a certain size boat. There's not commercial traffic allowed to be there, no overnight or anything like that. It goes on. So there's, pickups going on, that are on there. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but we're not enforcing it, and so trying to rely on enforcement is one thing. In this case, especially when someone brought up the idea of that this is at a nightclub or a bar, and people are going to raft up, on there. Who's going to stop them from rafting up? And if they're rafting up and a boat comes around, it could be disastrous.
Yeah.
So it's a severe safety issue that's there. And one thing, and on the communication that I'd written, was that we, as a board and as boaters, we value, having a destination, a place to go to in your boat, having access, being able to have docks. We want that. We want to have restaurants on the water. We want to be able to go places and do things. But there's certain places that it just doesn't work, and right here is one of those places where it doesn't work. And to keep encroaching and encroaching, and well, it's going to be, enforced, we can't rely on that. We can't, take that. It has to, if we have something where we can make it absolute, put a guardrail up where it stops, people from running off the bridge, you put a guardrail up. You don't say, well, it's illegal to drive off the bridge. Okay, well, how are you going to stop that? So, it really needs to be back to what it originally was, what we've been led to believe all along, is that this is a walkway, a railing put up to block it.
Yep.
And the walkway itself extends the width of the dock and the boat that would have been there, and that's how they figured out how far to put that walkway out. So there's no room to put anything beyond that. That was the whole reason of having a railing up there to block it, because that's the maximum length that you could come out with a 6-foot dock or an 8-foot dock and a boat of 10 or 12 feet in beam. That's the size of the walkway. So you can't go onto another one out there. So it's like rafting off a boat to a boat, but it's not a boat, it's a walkway that's there. And then there could be another boat rafting off that. Anyway, it's a,
You know, Jimmy, you
Just
mentioned the enforcement
beating a dead
issue.
horse, but yes.
This actually creates a bigger issue that's going to even further tax the resources of Sergeant O'Neill's team. And we've got limited personnel to enforce the rules we have in the areas. Why would we now create another issue that they have to respond to and another problem area that they have to now, patrol? It adds a workload across the board and it decreases safety. So,
What, the reason the rail was originally asked to be up there was because of the boat parade, 4th of July, and everything else and stuff, because of the crowd of people that could be on top of that, and there'd be shoving and everything else to get up to the front.
oh, yeah.
And if there was no rail in there, they could basically push a crowd of people off into the water.
Yep.
So the rail was designed as a safety factor to stop the people, and they're obviously, that's a great place to watch the boat parade.
Absolutely.
It's a great place to watch fireworks and stuff over there on the 4th of July. But I said, with an open thing, you put 1,000 people or something over there like that, there's going to be pushing and shoving to get up to the front.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that the rail was originally designed for.
Yep.
As a safety factor.
Yep, I think it's, all right. All right, I think we've addressed it, and I think we all have a pathway forward for communication and furthering our
So, Mr. Chair, we
thoughts.
don't need to have a formal resolution that as individual board members, we're going to make that communication or not, so.
Do we need an official communication, Andrew, you think?
The downside, once again, is the time frame.
Right.
Right.
You actually brought it up, that it
I
takes.
just, I'm saying for the city, but I'm
Commission
saying
meeting was yesterday.
individually, we don't have to put this as on the formal on the record, that we make a
That's correct. but-
motion and a second that we're each going to communicate individually.
Jimmy had a communication, didn't you?
Well, I think that our communication actually is the fact that we're going to communicate with
Yeah.
the Department of.
And that's in the minutes of
And
our
that's in the
meeting.
minutes.
And
Okay, I just
Andrew
wanna
will
make
put that
sure we
together and
wrapped it up with a
communicate that with
bow.
the commissioners.
Okay.
So that's how
What do you
that's,
think?
Sure,
that-
whatever you want to.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Is
I think time is of the essence.
yeah.
So I think the more communication we can have sooner, the better. And I think the commission will get our minutes from this meeting and be aware of that communication and understand that also. And as you said, they've got no action on this themselves. So before they'd have any look at this, the action's already happened. Right, it's already happened. So I think we can further that with ourselves through our communication pathways that have been identified tonight. So I think we're good there.
Can I say one thing? We're using the word communication a lot. I just want to make sure the board understands that in order for a communication of the commission to be brought forward, there's a motion required and a vote.
So, but do we need that official communication with this incident because of the timing?
If that's what you wish to do, that has to be formalized.
So why don't we do
So
this?
I
Why
would-
don't we-
I would like to make a motion that this board puts together a formal communication with the commission so that they can, even though we understand from a timeline standpoint, it's not going to necessarily directly impact this at this point. Jimmy's already done a very nice job of writing it, so I'd like to make a motion, we submit this to the commission for
Okay.
consideration.
Motion on the floor, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, discussion on the motion. Okay, all right, so let's, motion,
So is the communication as written, or do we want to modify what I had written down, or?
I'll leave it
Because
the way
I think because I was listening to the whole meeting and thinking if there's anything I left out that was brought up, and I think I got everything.
What do you
Okay,
think,
so the
Andrew?
communication of the commission is what you've composed with the photographs. But I think there's another component, which
Yeah.
is that you're going to communicate to.
the Army Corps of Engineers.
So that's a sentence that has to be.
That's gotta be added to the communication.
Okay, so in addition to the communication to the city, the motion would be that we would submit that to the city, as well as the fact that each member of the Marine Advisory Board will be communicating directly with the Army Corps of Engineers and any other elected officials they seem necessary that might impact this subject.
Do we all collectively object to the applicant? So I think that's what Andrew's asking, is that as a board, are we asking the commission to understand, that we're sending up a request that they understand that we are vehemently opposed to this?
Well, that's what the statement says, essentially. I mean, that's what his communication says, that
Well,
we're
it mentions
vehemently
it.
opposed, so. I didn't know if you feel that we should put that in the motion, that's fine too. I'm sorry, I'm giving you 16,000 versions of a motion. Sorry, I just have to use the latest rooms.
Yep.
So, I mean, to me is that, just wanted to make sure that they understood that that we're gonna do that we still gonna send it for the record to the city as a communication that we are, once again, this is not the first time we've been opposed to the fact that these things have been happening at this particular property, and that now we're going to.
So just to be clear, what we're going, our communication will include the added sentence of the individual board members will be communicating to the Army Corps of Engineers about their opposition to this request, according to the public notice, and also photographs that support that. That'll be the communication to the city, the official communication to the commission.
So one additional addition, because Steve just brought this up, is actually to lead it off with that the board objects to the application by the icon. Or
Unanimously objects.
lead off with that.
Yeah, that's how they all
Because
start.
that's not
right? Yeah.
specifically written.
That's the boilerplate, okay. So even though it's sort of the time is of the essence thing, we've got to communicate, but I think officially communicating to the commission also sort of closes the loop there with them when they go to the city manager and all that. So I hope we've got that clear. Do you need to read that back? Are you comfortable with it?
It's on tape.
It's on tape, okay, good.
But you're gonna be sending Mr. Whitman's draft letter or letter.
Mr. Harrison, yes,
I'm sorry.
right. He's our wordsmith.
Along with the comment.
the actual request for a
Correct,
public notice, along with the photographs.
correct, okay.
Add to this
These photos are
statement
gonna
that I
be
wrote,
two things.
we object
Right.
to that application.
The normal boilerplate addition.
Well,
This
From the
letter
board.
summarizes
And something
what
that-
happened,
Yeah.
but it doesn't say we have.
You're gonna speak to them.
that individually we will contact the Army Corps and copy
Royalty condition here.
on our emails, on our communications.
This says that you object.
Yeah.
It says it in here.
So I want to kind of also go to Bob Dennison and make sure, I know he's zooming in and that's got some
We
complications.
object to the
so.
putting docks, but it doesn't say we object to the application.
All right, so we got a thumbs up from Bob. Anything you want to add, Bob? Are you comfortable with that communication?
Yep, extremely comfortable.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, excellent. So we'll have the communication to the city commission with pictures. Yeah, I want to close that discussion first and we'll vote. So we're good on the motion, we're good on the wording of it, everyone's had their piece of it. So let's
Yep.
go ahead and let's vote on the motion on the table then. We've got a first and a second. Can we
After
please-
you do that, I have a request of Jimmy regarding this.
Okay, can we go ahead and vote on the motion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Made the motion, and did you second it?
She made it.
Jimmy seconded?
And Jimmy seconded it, correct.
So Jimmy, any alteration you want to make to this, since you have it in Word format already, you can just send it to me as you wish for it to be forwarded,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
I can't compose it.
Right, Jimmy's our wordsmith. All right, great. Anything, so moving on from that issue, any other old or new business for tonight? Here. Hearing no additional old or new business, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Real nice.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
Meeting adjourned.